Okay, so this week's all about planning, as I say, and it's all about planning it on paper because what you bring next week will be one piece of paper for every web page you're going to create. So, say you're going to create a website in your mind at the moment, a web page or a website with about 3 or 4 web pages. You're going to give me 3 pieces of paper and another piece of paper which just has boxes with the names of the different web pages on. So everything is on pieces of paper. You know what everything's going to be called, and you know what it's going to have on it. You'll see in examples in a minute. Okay, it seems daft that you're going to put it on paper, but as I say, it is to restrict you from getting distracted with all the beautiful things you can do with Google Sites because it's got so many features. Okay, so that's some of the terminology. So, for example, when we're talking about the header and the footers, they're the bits which appear at the top for the headers, or the footers appear at the bottom. So, every page, every website you've ever looked at will probably have something consistently at the top, maybe menus, well, maybe something else, something consistently at the bottom, maybe like the company address, and something possibly like navigation and menus which might change depending on which page you're on, and it will change accordingly. So there's a classic sort of basic layout. So you got a header, you got a footer. So your footer could have as I say, the address on it. Could have some sort of legalese built into it. Like if you ever go to a bank website, they'll have a legal statement to the bottom. If you ever go to like other companies like solicitors, they'll have some sort of legal statement, and it will be on every page exactly the same in the footer. When you go to navigation, if you go to a page, probably navigation, in this case it's along the top, but it could be down the side. The navigation will change depending on which page you're on. If you're on the first page, it will show the navigation to the second and third page. If you're on the second page, it will show navigation to the first page and the third page. You can see where it probably won't show you navigation maybe to the page you're on. It might do, depends on the system. The bit which changes most is what we call the body or the content. That will change with every page. Okay, and you may or may not like what we call sidebars, a little sort of thing on the side. For example, you may have like images which always appear in the same place, but the image changes. But then you might have text which appears there. Okay, so that's a sort of basic concept of a website. Move that over there. Now, that is what you're going to end up with next week. You're going to do these at home. Okay, a lot simpler than this, but this is somebody who's created like a portfolio website for their course, Unit 28, if you're interested, website production, and that's their actual finished website. But to get there, they've designed this plan. Okay, now we have a name for it. We call it storyboarding. You're telling the story. You're telling how your website will look and appear roughly, but just in writing. So we refer to it as storyboarding. You can even go as far as putting cutting out images and cutting out sort of swatches of colour and saying that's the image I'm going to use there, that's the colour I'm going to use for this, that's the colour I'm going to use for that. But you don't have to go to that much trouble because you can choose that on the day. It's not a problem. Okay, but but that's what you have to do. You have to decide before you do. It's like playing pool. You have to decide which pocket you're going to put the ball in. You can't just be let loose to do it yourself, because if you do, believe me, you won't be happy with the results because you will get distracted. That's a big issue for everyone. We're all the same in that regard. Okay, so the other thing you'll give me is what's called a navigation plan. Basically, you draw, if you've got a 3-page website, you'll give me a piece of paper with 3 boxes and how they all link together. So this is quite complicated compared to what you're going to have. You always have one page which is called the home page. Now, if you go to, I don't know, if you go to Google, the home page is the page you land on. It's the page you start off, and everyone starts on the same page. Okay, that's the home page. It's the starting point. Okay, from there might be like pages which are available, and there will be lines and arrows pointing, or just simple lines to say you can get to and from this page from that page. So, for example, you can't get from the tips page to the travel page directly. You have to go back via the home page. Okay, or there might be navigation to do it, but that's what it's representing, and it's saying the names. So halfway through developing my website, I'm not going to change the word events for the page and think about it as trips, or accidentally start thinking about it with a different name, I've got a piece of paper at all times which tells me what I'm going to call these web pages. So another trick people fall into is they start changing things. They start making their own, as you're going through. Because this is going to take you 4 weeks, remember, to put your website together, 3 or 4 weeks. So over the 3 or 4 weeks, you could easily make the mistake of, and then you end up with like 2 pages which do the same thing. And so it's all to help you. As I say, you're more than welcome. You can have a bonfire and destroy these pieces of paper at the end symbolically at home. Put them on the barbecue because people will be like, "Oh, this is stopping me from doing what I want to." No, it's not. It's still just starting you correctly. Once you get to the point you've done it, you've done that. Then you can do what you like. By which time most people are ready to sensibly make logical changes and not just go full head on into creating ridiculous. You start putting things in you don't need, but that's if you don't put it on paper. Okay, so that's what you're going to give me. You're going to give me an actual plan, 1 page per sheet, per web page, and one navigation plan to say what the name. And your navigation plan will be very basic, very, very basic. You're not going to create many pages. Okay, they're very complicated ones. Some people produced a navigation plan in Word with drawn boxes. Don't bother with that. It's too much work. Too much work. So there's an example, just one example of quite a complicated, web page. Do you want a web page? There's the navigation. There's the heading. There's the heading. There's the navigation underneath. Then they've got these various sort of sections. Yeah. And they've written little. Oops, gone too far. They've written little notes. And it's quite detailed. Probably take them a good hour to put together. That might be what you got, from like a professional, web app developer who's really got a lot of thought going into it and how it goes. In reality, probably most of you will have something like that. You don't need a lot of this now. You'll probably have something quite basic, very, very basic. And don't worry if it looks really, really plain and, it's not going to have all the detail. It's just going to have a starting point, as I say. Okay. And it might be a little bit more advanced. You might be having, might be planning your images. You might go away and start thinking about what images. You might go finding the images, downloading them onto your computer, developing what you're going to have. You might be looking at backgrounds. You might be saying, "Oh, I want a background on my," So you might be looking at all that and sort of planning it and making notes of it all, what have you.